Greetings, viewers, and welcome once again to Healing Families with Pastor Zandi. It's such a privilege and a joy for me to be here with you today to share some truths that I believe are going to enhance your relationship with your spouse and hopefully even make positive changes to other relationships that you have. Today, I'd like for us to speak on the subject of communication. This is a very important subject in the sense that when we start our relationships with our spouses, they begin only because of communication. And a lot of times when that begins to deteriorate, we don't give it as much attention as we should. And yet, anytime that we're not communicating with our spouses, what we're really doing is we're sitting on the neck of the relationship. We're throttling the relationship, and it is in danger of dying. So sometimes you're wondering why the relationship has deteriorated and why we're not getting along the way we used to. But the communication is a very important part to that. And so today I hope that as you listen, there are going to be truths that I will share with you that help my relationship with my husband, that I believe will help your relationship as well. One of the first things that I realize is that there are rules for communication. A lot of times we want to live and, enjoy marriage in such a way that we're not acknowledging any rules. We think everything flows from a place of love. We love each other. Surely we know how to talk to each other, but that's not the case. So when you observe certain rules, especially how to communicate with each other when you are conflicted and when there is a dispute among you, it becomes very, very important for you to observe certain rules. Rule number one that I'd want to highlight today is the rule of choosing the right time and place. It sounds very basic, but choosing the right time and place is very important. You cannot pounce on your spouse as they walk in through the door with, how you were offended when they said A, B, C, D. You've not asked them about their day. You've not bothered to greet them and, to go through the niceties. You don't know what headspace they're in. And so you're trying to communicate, but it won't be effective. Why? Because you communicated at the wrong time. Sometimes you want to speak to your spouse about something maybe that you are not happy with that they are doing or saying, but it's in a public space. And just because you're not choosing the right place for the communication, then it's not effective. For example, men especially, women as well, but men especially are very sensitive to how they're addressed in public. So if you're going to correct your spouse in a public space, he could actually be wrong and the correction could be warranted. However, I think wisdom, says you should wait for a better time when it's just the two of you. Sometimes my husband and I will have people over and he'll be narrating an incident that happened when we were alone or when both of us were there. And I'll notice that, the narration, the accuracy of what he's saying may be a bit questionable. It may not be that I remember the events unfolding the way he does. It's okay maybe to just, I don't want to say take a gentle jab at him, but for lack of a better way to phrase it, you can nudge him in the right direction. But if there's resistance, I don't think it's a time to let a fight ensue because you are insisting that, no, actually what happened was, no, that's a lie. It's, you know what, you're not going to win. Instead, your spouse is going to be more conscious of the fact that they're feeling attacked and in front of people. So whatever you're trying to get across won't be understood just because it wasn't the right time. Another important rule for communication is that it's important to use the right tone of voice. A lot of times we actually just are very careless in the tone of voice that we assume when speaking to the people that we live with or the people that we love. We're very careless. I remember that early in my marriage, I have been married for 27 years. We're well into our 28th year now. I thank God for that. 27 years is a very long time. So I'm thankful to God that I made it thus far. I'm hoping for many more happy and blissful years. To go back to the subject at hand, there was a time early in our marriage when I felt like I had a right to speak to my husband the way I felt. In other words, if I felt angry, I felt it was okay for me to yell. It was like, I am upset, so why should I be sounding nice? I didn't understand that a tone of voice is a choice. It's a choice that you can make. You can be very upset and still speak using the right tone of voice. If you want the communication to be effective, if you want to be heard, you can't act like a child and raise your voice and yell, because that's offensive, especially to someone that you supposedly love. The hostility even in your voice. So it's not just that you are careful about your volume, how loud you are. You are careful about the tone that you are using. I remember that I came from a home where we were taught to be very, very polite, please, thank you, all of that. And my husband would be maybe watching the news and a bit distracted because, that's his focus. And then I'd walk into the room and be like, love, and then he'd be like, autul. And that would just shred me because I'm like, wait, why is this guy being so rude? I'd feel like he's being rude. And it wasn't because he raised his voice or yelled. It was just that he wasn't being careful to make sure that he's assuming a tone that is gentle with me just because he's married to me. And when we learned what I'm now sharing with you, then he was able to realize that it's very important for him to word or phrase his words very, very carefully. I used to raise my voice. I stopped because after I learned this, I realized that when I raise my voice, my husband feels like I'm talking to him like he's a child or like, it's offensive, and he wasn't happy with it. And I had to change. And when I started to speak to my husband in the correct tone of voice, I found that the results were more and more what I hoped for than when I was yelling and trying to get my point across. Another point is the point of being clear and specific. It's very, very important when you are in a relationship to be clear and specific when you try to put your point across. For whatever reason, sometimes we are not very specific. We might say, especially ladies, we tend to just want for men to read between the lines, and they suck at it, so they don't get it, and we get very mad because they are not understanding it. But one such a case was a case of a woman who wanted her husband to be more affectionate with her in public, like, huggy and cuddly and, holding hands and all of that. So she started to speak to her husband and describe how she was very, she really admired how that couple was very affectionate in public. And the husband didn't respond the way that she had hoped for. He actually just said, I also think they're a really cute couple. I love how they hold hands and whatever. And it ended at that. And she was very, very hurt because she had hoped that he would then become more affectionate. But my question was, why didn't you say, love, please hold my hand. Like, I like when we walk in public, I'd like for you to hold my hand. I'd like for you to hug on me, even if there's people there, especially if you think I'm not doing well. I don't like that I'm a deep, dark secret and you're being affectionate with me only behind closed doors. If you express it clearly like that, then you find that your husband actually understands what it is that you want. It's not just women who fail to be clear and specific. There's an incident where my husband and I were supposed to travel abroad to the UK, and we were going to stay with a male friend of ours, and my husband was not able to make the trip anymore. So I asked him if he was comfortable with me going, and he responded by saying, of course, I wouldn't want to mess this up for you. In reality, as I found out just before I traveled, he was not comfortable at all. He knew he would not be too excited, when I would paint the town red, as he knows I typically will do that with this other random person in the UK. So the problem with the whole situation was that when he was asked, he was thinking more of the fact that it will seem or feel like I'm not wanting you to enjoy yourself in my absence. Now that I'm not able to make the trip, I'm cutting your happiness short. He felt it might be selfish. Marriage is a very intimate thing. You need to be very close to your spouse. And what that means is you need to be able to be transparent, to be clear, to speak your heart and your mind, and not be ashamed to even say, I think I'll feel a little jealous when I see you having fun with someone else. I felt like that's something that should have belonged to just the two of us. And I'm not eager to see you share that with anyone. And of course, I didn't make the trip after my husband expressed his misgivings. But my issue was, it would have saved me a lot of time and planning and a bit of money that was invested in the trip if he had communicated it earlier. Although in retrospect, I understand why he was not comfortable saying it from the onset. But what I'm saying is spouses tend to fail to be clear and specific, and it really messes up the communication, because if I don't really know how you feel, it's likely that I'm going to behave in a way that is not going to be pleasing to you. So be clear, be specific. If you don't like it, say, I don't like it. Please don't do it like this. That even when we talk about sexual intimacy, a subject that we will go into, communication plays a very vital role in that you will never be fulfilled sexually in your sexual relationship if you're not able to express yourself clearly, because then there's a lot of stuff that will be going on that you are totally not into, and you are miserable and you're unhappy, and you understand that if you're married, the hope, the wish, the desire is that you're going to be intimate with this person for the rest of your life, and with just that one person. Can you imagine being unhappy with someone that you have to live with for the rest of your life and you have to be sexually intimate with for the rest of your life? It's not going to work. You're going to find yourself being unfaithful. You're going to find yourself being bitter and spiteful. The better thing to do is to just make sure that you say specifically, you know what, I don't like when I'm being touched like this, or when this happens, I'm not happy with that. Be clear, be specific, and that will definitely enhance your relationship with your spouse. The next point would be avoid name calling. And I'm being polite when I say avoid name calling. It really has no place in the relationship. Every time, name calling is if you say to your spouse, you're selfish. You've just labeled your spouse as selfish. And the problem with that is you've almost created a cage that they belong to. It's better that you express how the action, what they are doing, affects you, than for you to then label them with, do you understand what I'm saying? So you prepare a meal, your spouse is constantly coming in late, and yet he knows that, you know, you're supposed to have supper at this time. If you have supper at 7, at least it gives you an opportunity to be able to bath the babies and put them to bed before 8, before the correct, time for them to be in bed. It feels like my spouse is being selfish. He's not thinking of how much work I have and how much I need to also have some rest time before bedtime, But instead of saying you are selfish, you only think about yourself, I think it's more appropriate, for you to actually talk about how it affects you. Love, when you're coming late, we end up eating late, and that messes up the entire schedule. The kids, I put them to bed too late, and then I'm disrupted because I also need to have some alone time, some rest time before I can actually go to bed. Express how you are affected as opposed to calling them names. You're a latecomer, you're selfish, you are this. One thing that I learned in my journey is that I'm a prophet over my husband's life. And what that means is that what I say has impact. There's a way in which it can be established in his life and it can become a reality just because of my place in his life. Just because I'm actually his wife, I almost have legal ground to say things and have them be established and eventually see them in his life. So what I mean by that is, instead of name calling, maybe you should speak about what you want to see. You should call those things which are not as though they are. You should make a conscious decision that I'm going to focus more on what I love about my husband, and that's what I'm going to magnify, that's what I'm going to celebrate. Or even about your wife. You celebrate, oh, you're so kind, you're so generous, you're so thoughtful, you're so considerate, you're such a good cook, you go out of your way to talk about the things that are positive. And when people are hearing things that are positive, they are more open even to correction. we do quite a bit of counseling, my husband and I. And one of the things that we do is we ask when people want to talk about what they don't like about their spouse and what they want to see change in their spouse, we always ask them to first highlight what it is they like, what it is they celebrate about the person they are with. Why do we do that? Because it's important for the person to realize that they are not being coupled together with their actions. They are not being, when you reprimand the person, it's the action that you're not happy with, not that you're now unhappy with the person. You're separating the two, which brings me to my next point. Use endearments. Endearments are, I love you, oh, my baby, my love, sweetheart, darling, whatever it is that, people are very fancy nowadays. They can be very creative. But use endearments when you talk to each other. It's very important. It's not for show. When I say to my husband, my love, I don't like, as soon as I say my love, I've isolated him from the action and I've brought him closer to me. I've said my love. I acknowledge that you still belong to me. I acknowledge that I still love you. And so when I say my love, I didn't like the way, then there's a demarcation between the person and the behavior. And he's able very quickly to recognize that the problem is what I did. I am not the problem. And this is so pivotal in relationships. So I know in the Swazi context especially, we like to call each other, refer to each other by generic names like Babe, Namage, and you hear like a man refer to his wife as Mage, Emage, Abuela, or, stuff like that. And we discourage that because words are powerful. If you're going to refer to me as your mom, I'm going to be an old, boring mom, and I don't think you want to be married to your mom. So we discourage it, and honestly, not to spite the Swazi culture, but because it really actually takes away from the relationship. You become Mage na Babe, and that's how you relate, instead of boyfriend and girlfriend, best friends, partners. The partnership is instantly challenged because of the words that you are speaking. Use endearments, especially when there's a conflict. It becomes very, very important for you to say, sweetheart, my love, whatever it is you want to call that person, make sure that they still feel the warmth of your love while you are highlighting what it is you are not happy with. Okay. Sorry. We have to stop. You'll cut, ne? That's what I wanted to know, because how much more time do I have? I'll do one more. Okay. The next point that I'd like to put across is that it becomes also very, very important for married people to be respectful of each other's opinions when they're communicating. Sometimes we can become almost rude in how, someone will express an opinion, and it might be a very foolish opinion, but you need to still maintain respect. Like if your wife is there saying they want, for you to buy, can all our cars be BMWs? We'll buy the BMW Baki. And you know that doesn't exist. It's not time for you to say, are you mad? Well, pea-sized brain or whatever. You start, hurling insults. Be respectful of the person's opinion. Find a dignified way of showing them that they're actually in error or they're ignorant, but in a way that they still feel comfortable expressing themselves. Maintain respect in your communication. Very, very important. It encourages that the person will still be free to express themselves without a fear of being shamed. I hope the truths that we have shared have encouraged you, and that there's something that you can take that will impact your relationship better. Until next time, God bless you.